Hey everyone, welcome in Betsperts Golf here for our first look at the 2025 Mexico Open. California swing behind us, Florida on deck. Ludwig Oberg seals the deal. Really good golf over the weekend. Ron, how we doing?
Doing well. Yeah, I'm kind of mad at myself for I played him a lot in DFS, but he's just like the perfect course fit. But I was still scared off from his past performances. Getting sick and then coming back and being rusty still, and so it's just Torrey Pines is just such a perfect place for him. And yeah, it's just golf is hard to figure out because Rory's looking like he's the best player in the world, and then he has a typical Rory, kind of collapse on the weekend. And like we said, Scotty's still a little rusty, and yeah, Ludwig was sitting right there at 25 all week, and I know you jumped all over him, and I'm very jealous of you.
I was always going there. I waited a little bit on Monday to hopefully maybe get a better number, but I felt like 25 was definitely fair. Again, fair in the context of outright golf betting, knowing that all these numbers are not super fair because there's just so much hold. But at the top of the board, yeah, I felt there was a fair price for him too. And yeah, pot committed. I mean, I played him last year here. I was definitely on him, obviously, last time for the Farmers. I know he bit some people at Pebble at a much shorter price. And of course, that again, when these elites, the fit is anywhere. And I think Ludwig is, definitely either in that tier, the precipice of that tier for sure. But 25 made a ton of sense. And yeah, exciting golf on the weekend. I mean, obviously, Scotty, we were talking just before we hit go live, like Scotty with his, I don't know, B- game. He had the worst score on 54 guys golfed on Saturday. He had the worst score, 4 over, and then he still almost wins. He kind of did it last week too, where he just wasn't really dialed in and was very much first page of the leaderboard, top 5 for most of the event. And I think it's somewhat terrifying. I don't know what to make of Rory. I mean, I think just he doesn't come here for a reason. I think he fits the course, but like I think this is probably one of those dudes just doesn't like these Poa greens. He just couldn't make anything. Burned edge after edge all day Saturday. It was more of the same on Sunday. Hopefully we get some maybe inflated Rory numbers here as we move into Florida and major season, because I kind of want to throw it out and not really give it any credence, because I still think he's playing really good golf, and I think just these Poa greens can get anybody, and they got everybody at some point, right? Like they're brutal.
Yeah, I think maybe more attention needs to be made to the Poa part of this because if you look at a lot of these guys, like even Matt Fitzpatrick, who I message with sometimes, and he just basically flat out said, no, he's a great putter, and he's flat out said he can't stand these greens, and you can kind of see it in the numbers. And so
Yep.
some of these guys, like Fitzpatrick, the guy who just loves Bermuda, and so going back to your thing with your conversation with Jordan Spieth last year, I think some guys we probably need to pay a little more attention to those. Maybe some guys less who have proven they can putt on any surface. But yeah, I think you look at Rory, not really a big West Coast swing guy. Of course he did one a few weeks ago, but I just think overall we need to probably pay a little more attention to that.
Yeah, definitely in the extremes. The tough with the Poa, the California Poa like that, we get such a small sample too, so it's tough because it's somewhat statistically noisy. But you can see when someone's struggling there, there's definitely something to it as well. So if you watched enough golf and you were sweating anyone near at the top of the board, at some point you watch them miss a putt that you're like a frustrating putt from close in. It's just hard to putt here. So yeah, just exciting golf, and we get a little bit of a shifting gears here in Mexico. Kind of no man's land in the schedule as we move over to Florida. A lot of the big dogs, they got simulator golf to play today, so they had to get over to Florida. They couldn't make their way down to Mexico as well. So the field not super strong. 4th year here at the Greg Norman signature course at the Vedanta Resort. Just bombers, Ron. Talk to us a little bit about the course, what we should expect, and how we handicap this board today.
So, like you said, it's a very weak field. Obviously, a little bit worse now with Mav McNeely withdrawing. So, I mean, just looking from a field strength perspective, and this is something we can get into on the rabbit hole, with, obviously our ability to filter for weak field events. But you're looking at Akshay Bhatia, Aaron Rai, Steven Yeager, Kurt Kitayama, the Højgaard brothers. Maybe Jake Knapp, returning champion from last year, but it's looking pretty weak up top. But as for the course, this is maybe the ultimate Bombers course. I know we say that different times during the year, but this is 7,400 yards long. It's only a par 71, so kind of measures out as the 7th longest course on tour. It is right off the Pacific coast, so it's a coastal course. It's a kind of a huge resort down there on the coast of Mexico. So obviously it's going to be set up pretty easy. If you look at the greens, actually the entire course is paspalum, just wall to wall, kind of a very sticky surface. When we get into, off the tee, it's one, maybe focus a little more on carry distance this week because, paspalum tends to not get as much rollout on drives. And so when we look at that, take a closer look at that. We have large greens, 7,000 square feet. So that's just very typical for resort style courses. Greens and regulation, very easy. Fairway hits, very easy. We do have 12 holes with water danger. So that's going to be something to look at. Not really as much off the tee, a little bit more on approach. But those are a bunch of things that I'll be looking at this week. And just really quick, I know you might hear Birdie Fest, because when you look at some of the winning scores, we had 17 under, 19 under, 24 under, but when you dig down and look into kind of like the median scoring average, it's only the 18th easiest course. So when we get kind of into that middle of the pack range, there are some holes that can kind of trip you up. So not a Birdie Fest, but definitely kind of in the easy scoring course rank.
Yeah, no, that's a good call out too. Some of the notes from your preview on the site, betspertsgolf.com. You can see water danger. Yeah, 5th most holes. Interesting to think about that in terms of approach versus off the tee. You can see a little bit of elevation here as well. You mentioned the unique layout here as a par 71 with the extra par 3. We're stretching out some fairly long par 3s. When we look at the shot dispersion too, we got a lot of long irons. Even though you're bombing away, these guys are, for the most part, having 175 plus in on a lot of these approach shots too. So some nice corollary courses that I think matter. Combination of resort level courses that are maybe in this region of the country, this climate, but then also some spots where you are going to see weaker fields as well. So you're going to Ron's point, you can use the rabbit hole to look at weaker fields. You can also use it to look at the corollary courses as well. And I think you're going to get some overlap too, for the most part. Obviously, Memorial Park, Scottsdale, a little bit better courses than you would say what we see typically at Corrales or Craig Ranch or something like that. So definitely unique ways to use the rabbit hole to look at it this week. Let's look at the odds board here real quick. As you mentioned, shout out to our friends over at Unabated. Akshay at the top. Akshay's played, again, probably level up at this point, right, where he's, not a lot of signature event golfers in this field. But at this point, Akshay is, moved himself out of it. But he's played some really good golf on coastal golf courses. Wind, can kick up at times here. That's been a thing. You see Rasmus Højgaard, his brother, a little bit further down the board. Kurt Kitayama has been in the mix here in the past as well, long off the tee. Sam Stevens, same. You see some guys that played well the first run through at the Farmers, some guys that played well, I think also in Minnesota too, where it's another spot where you have bombs away with a lot of water off the tee here as well. But yeah, definitely an interesting mind meld where you have to pay, say, the same for Michael Kim as you paid for Ludwig Oberg last week, right? Because the field is a very, very different look. So I know you made a couple of bets early. We're not going to give that away. Subscribers had that early. I know I fired one, waiting on some prices for some other stuff here this week. But definitely an interesting week. Again, coming off of a bomber and a bomb down the board, winning here last year, and Jake Knapp too. Because otherwise, we've had some top of the board here. Rom would come here in the past. Finau in the past as well. Those guys all skipping this year.
Yeah, if you look at the past 3 winners, you can kind of clearly see what kind of course this is. And But yeah, even looking at course history, they've only played here 3 years, so this is not a big course history week, at least not yet, according to the data. But it is interesting to note, some of the guys on top. Patrick Rogers has played here 3 years. He has 3 straight top tens. Steven Yeager, another guy who, I'm a little shocked he's not a little, his odds aren't a little higher than what they are because or I should say his odds aren't lower because he also finished third here last year. He's got 18th, 15th. Even a guy like Emiliano Grillo, who kind of it tends to pop on Paspalum. He's got the third best course history here, and I think he's still sitting over 100 to 1. So
Yep.
there are some guys on top I really like, but there are some guys kind of sitting down in that 60 to 100 range that I think could make some noise this week.
Yeah, I think the down the board is really interesting, and I part of it is how you approach the week, or you find the value, or how you like to handle these wide open weeks. But I think there are definitely some interesting plays deeper down the board here, because I think when you don't have alphas at the top, I definitely think it brings more variance into play. So yeah, you can go into tournament cheat sheet here on the site as well. Look at course history. Again, not a big course history week, but again, having some familiarity here, probably you would always have it help. You'd rather have it than not have it. I think it could be a good spot for like tiebreakers if you were between a couple of guys. You can also get some just rolling form as well. If we look at the key stats here too, you can expand this again, looking at the details here of the course, where you can get some of the details that Ron's talking about. Driver heavy, obviously. We can show you some of the actual numbers on that here as well. You can see non-penal rough, short, Paspalum rough, and we are tips to tails Paspalum. You can see fairway rough on the greens as well. And again, not a lot of examples of that, but again, you can see some coastal courses that have that as well. Low miss fairway penalty in combination with driver heavy. I think that's a useful way to look at things through the rabbit hole as well. You could see the par scoring here, scoring averages. This is to Ron's point, more par fours than anything else, and it's average. So it's not, there's a little bit of teeth in a few of these holes. As you go through some of the stats, you can also get another list here, the corollary courses. You can see not a massive, birdie fest. Again, when you have these longer par threes too, that makes these are, interesting scoring holes, right? Other than the 170s, you're basically pushing, right around 200 for most of these par threes. So that's that can temper scoring expectations as well. Anything else that jumps out to you here that you want to touch on here? We can get into some of the course metrics as well.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple week for me. Like we've already talked about, a lot of just driver heavy stuff off the tee. Kind of again trying to kind of create the scenario players are going to face this week, as far as weak field, long course, bomber heavy, and just kind of looking at a lot of the scoring stats, including I think obviously par 5 scoring. One thing I'll note really quick is looking at this course has the longest combined par 4s and 5s on tour. So when you take out the par 3s, just look at the 4s and 5s. Like these are the longest holes on tour. So it's kind of interesting to kind of keep in mind as well.
Yep. You can see the driver usage here. So we touched on PGA Tour average over the last 5 years, 67.3%. We are almost at 80% driver usage here. Just absolutely club head cover coming off. You need to get down there, push it down there, especially with the rough not being super penal. That matters a ton. And then when you look at approach shot distribution, I think these are some of the important ones to look at. You can see not a lot from 50 to 125. When you start to go out a little bit, even 150 to 175, which is typically 20%, you're touch under that here. You can see some years way under that. Start to crawl out a little bit here. 175 to 200 plus, we're about 5% above tour average. Total 200 plus, I mean, look at this jump. We are 15% above tour average on 200 plus. Some of the stuff that we have here in the rabbit hole that is unique that you will not find anywhere else is when you start to get into the above 200 buckets. We can bottle this out for you as well. You can see just total 200 to 225 in particular, almost 10% higher. It's a pretty massive jump. Same thing, about 2.5%, 3% above from the 225 to 250 range. And then when you just get 250 plus as well, again, only, 10 and a half, 11%, but it is double what you typically see, right? So you can get all this detail where you cannot find this anywhere else. Good stuff.
Yep.
You get into some of the scoring stuff if you want to break it out into proximity, because again, we can see here proximity from these 200 plus buckets are going to matter. Around the green, are you giving it any look at all, Ron?
I give it a look every week, but this week is so, this just kind of fits one of those weeks where you're just not gonna. Obviously, the greens are so big, and so even if guys are off on approach, they're probably going to be on the edge of the green as far as not actually missing the green.
Yeah.
So for me, obviously, coastal winds can be an issue here, and I will say just kind of a little showdown edge. This course for the past 3 years, like clockwork, at 11 o'clock. Almost every day the winds pick up. Even if I picked this up last year, even if they're not forecasted to pick up, you go back and look, winds pick up almost every single time in the afternoon, and so kind of really early in the afternoon. So I think that's something also. If you're playing showdown lineups, definitely pay attention. Play morning players because they kind of tend to have an advantage here.
Nice. Okay, good call up. Yeah, I like that. Dave in the chat wants to know 25-1 a good number for Jaeger. Let's see when we had our best Jaeger numbers here at the top. FanDuel has a 30. You have access to that, David. Highly recommend that. 25 seems to be fair in relation to some other stuff. Looks like Bet Online has 30s as well if you were still playing, messing around with offshore stuff if you have to. But yeah, I mean, Jaeger and Bomber courses, hard not to like it. And, as Ron said, definitely felt like he was going to open a little shorter than he is. And in terms of some of the other guys at the top, I think he's probably one of the better price guys. So don't hate that play at all.
Yeah, he was actually 25 yesterday when DraftKings opened, and I was a little shocked that he was 30 this morning. So, yeah, he's a guy who's really increased his ball speed over the last couple of years, and just another guy who really fits the course well.
Yep. Matt, promo code for the rabbit hole, access to Betsperts Golf in general. You can check us out for a month using promo code 10month. We'll get you $10 for your first month, typically $29.99. Annual is right in line with, I guess, what you would call competition, other data provider sites. We joke around that, we have stuff that no one else has. So I'm not sure we have a ton of competition, but you DM me on Twitter or at Betsperts Golf if you want a code for an annual discount. Can get that for you. Get you an annual for $200. So let me know. Reach out to us if you want to check it out for longer. All right, we let's get into it. And I think it's a good call out too on the birdie fest, because you can see Finau at 24. Obviously, Knapp kind of getting real close to 20. But you look here at the top. I mean, top 10. You guys still get a bunch of guys right around 12. I mean, that's not crazy. You're seeing guys finishing top 10, just nice low round here, but just kind of kicking around in the upper 60s. Even to make the cut, you're dealing with single digits, low single digits here. So not a massive birdie fest. You're going to have guys that kind of pop and have a round to be competitive, but it's not something where you're going to have a bunch of guys sub 20. Finau is an outlier there. Depending on what's happening with the wind, I think that can matter, but not necessarily something that I would just say long, super easy conditions. So, you can jump into some of the different scoring stuff here as well. Look at the data that matches your discussion around par 4 and 5 scoring and the distances here. See if there's anything that jumps out. See par 3 scoring, par 3 birdies kind of in line. Nothing that's crazy, but longer ones for sure, as you mentioned there. See putting ranges, nothing that's a massive outlier per se. You're making a little bit less from 20 plus. Again, these guys don't see past Paul all the time either, so it is a little bit of a unique one.
Yeah, this is kind of, I think, other than the PGA Championship that was at Giowa, this is really the only other course that has shot link on Paspalum. Because most of these other coastal resort courses, Puerto Rico Open, there's no shot link data there. So this is really one of our few glimpses of getting all the data on a Paspalum course.
Yeah. Let's jump into the rabbit hole. Let's look at a few things here. Where would you start foundationally this week?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm trying to create the same conditions that golfers are, pretty much going to be in this week. So I think for me, I think I'll probably do course length separately. But one thing I would combine is we can do this whenever. But
Sure.
scoring conditions, I'll go easy, very easy, and I'll even throw average in there. But then field strength, I'll go weak and very weak. So obviously trying to create it's easier scoring, but at the same time, this is a very weak field, and there should be a pretty good sample when we run this. So just kind of what we've done past weeks where we go, strong
Yep.
field combined with tougher scoring.
Let's look. We'll go last 2 years. Let's see what that sample looks like. It should be a decent sample year. A lot of these guys are in that type of event too. And you are going to get some real small sample stuff this week because you're going to get some guys that are coming from maybe from DP World Tour, some guys that don't have full status, and younger Corn Ferry grads and stuff like that because they have a really, really small sample. You can choose to weed that out if you want in the minimum round feature here. But you are going to get that this week. These guys have not been playing in the signature events, so you're going to have some real small sample stuff. But last 2 years, real sizable sample, average, easy, very easy scoring conditions against weaker fields. Ben Griffin, Michael Kim, Bo Hostler, Akshay, Justin Lauer, Chan Kim, Carson Young, our guy Thor, Highsmith, Smalley. You could see Yeager right behind. Taylor Moore's right in that mix. Aaron Rai, Kitayama. So a lot of guys you would expect kind of right here hovering in the top 20 in that range, which makes a ton of sense. So that's a good way to start for sure. Just kind of, again, write some names down. If you want to add it and put it in your model, all you can do is click in this little column. You can add it. When you're done adding all your stuff, you can go into this little create mixed condition model section, weigh it as you like, spit out your model. It's a great way to look at other models. I love this in the chat this morning for our subscribers. Sam C said, he went in and looked at a bunch of expert rankings, and you can go in here. You can see my models in here. I can see PGA Tout on Twitter, Matt Vicenzi, Andy Lack, just a bunch of different folks modeling out here. And just click into their models, see if there's anything, the commonalities that are at the top to jump out, and then you can start betting early on Monday morning before you read any content, wait for other picks. It's a great resource and a great use of the tools to just kind of click into some different models and see if you see anything that jumps out to you price-wise. So I love that use of the tool for sure. All right, let's reset this. I like it. See if we start to see any other names here. Come back on Tuesday on our betting show. Andy and I will build a model. Again, for subscribers, you can go in and look at the first model that I already built late last night. Let's see. I want to go back into looking at long golf courses. See long, very long here. And I want to look at driver heavy off the I could go in and click, off the tee club, driver heavy, because that's what we have this week too. You could also just look at driver heavy by itself. You could look at driver heavy with low missed fairway penalty. I think that makes a ton of sense because that's kind of what we have here. Basically, club head cover off, just to even keep up here. So let's take a look at this. We'll get a bigger sample size.
And that's the beautiful thing is you could take driver heavy with long, and then you could take driver heavy with missed fairway penalty, and because there's really little danger off the tee here, and so it's almost like you're trying to create different scenarios, and again, if you have guys who are popping in each of these, it's a good sign probably.
Yeah, I think you can look at this in a bunch of ways. You can look at this solely off the tee. You can see this list here: Kevin Yu, Vincent Norman, Hayden Springer, Alex Smalley. Bogheiter can hit an absolute country mile. We saw that for a little bit where he teased at the Farmers a couple times ago. Even, kid got to play. He won the South American Open, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago when he was like 16, 17, played it at the Masters, got to tee it up there. So kid's going to contend in places where length is on the menu. Patrick Rogers coming off of some good golf, obviously. Nick Hardy, Steven Yeager, Rico Hoey, and you see some small sample stuff for Celine. You're going to have some of this stuff too. Toasty. If you want to look at this in ball striking, which I think makes a ton of sense too, because you kind of want to get a sense of, when you keep yourself, can you get yourself down there? You're using driver, set yourself up a little bit for, again, long approach is kind of tied in this too. This gives you a little bit of that proximity that we're talking about too, without actually having to dial into specific proximity stuff. We're looking at approach on longer golf courses, some similar names, but some names that popped up here. Smalley, again, Kitayama, Chuck Hoffman, Nicola Højgaard, Putnam. It doesn't hit it very far, but the approach numbers are nice. You, Jaeger, Kim, Ben Martin, Nick Hardy again. So again, you start to thread some needles through some names that are showing up a couple different times.
Yeah, and don't forget to use the minimum rounds feature too. We have so like Ryan said at the beginning, you're going to see some guys like, you can see Nicholas Norgard, who's kind of plays mostly on the DP World Tour, but he is an absolute bomber. So it's going to be hard this week because there's just not enough sample size probably overall with him, and you're going to have that for a lot of guys this week because the field's so weak. So just kind of use that minimum round feature, and it will filter those guys out. They won't be in your model if you use that, but it's still a lot of these guys are still kind of waiting on for more rounds.
Yeah, you see some of these small sample guys. Another one, Antoine Rosner, hits it pretty far. Not an absolute bomber necessarily, like like a Ricky Castillo or as you mentioned, Svensson, Jasper Svensson, bomber. We just don't have a lot of data with these guys, so you can find other ways to look at their form and how they've been doing elsewhere. But yeah, Norgard's another absolute bomber that we are not going to have a large sample without that DP World Tour data. So Matt is in. Shout out to Matt. Welcome to the squad. We appreciate that. Find the ways to jump in your welcome email to get access to our Discord. It's actually, you just scroll to the top of the site as well. You can see Discord and get in there, turn on notifications, staff picks. We have a betting chat that'll be absolutely on fire today because we have 4 TGL matches in the next 2 days, 3 today, 1 tomorrow. Crew loves betting on TGL, so jump in there if you want to sweat that out. But yeah, you can get into the Discord, turn on the staff picks notifications, and you can get anything that Ron and I push out through there. Welcome to the squad. All right. I think, again, looking at things through the lens of off the tee, driver heavy this week, I think is really important. Like, you can really leave that filter on, or even leave these filters on, mess around with sample size if you want, and look at a lot of stuff through that lens. I think it's a great way to look at things this week. All right, what else should we look at?
So we don't have to necessarily open these now, but if you go to course region, go back to the main page there, the front page, and if you just wanted to look, because there are actually quite a bit of tournaments in Mexico now, so if you just want to look how do players perform in Mexico, you have that option. If you go to course type, there's a lot of things here. So this is a coastal course. It obviously the winds, like I said, kick up in the afternoon. But that we obviously have a wind filter. But if you don't want to look at that, I think coastal kind of covers it as well. Also a resort course. So if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see how kind of these easier. Now we've already kind of looked at that with your field stuff. So you don't want to double count some of these, but there's just different angles of approach that you can kind of take when you look at some of these other filters that we have.
It's a good call out. And also too, if you want to look at that, we had that list we showed you. When you go into the key stats, it's in Ron's preview. You can also look at the corollary courses as well. And you can simply go into the rabbit hole and do that as well. You can simply add any of these courses that you like, all the courses as well. Doesn't have to just be one. You can add as many as you'd like, and look at through the corollary course lens too. So some other different ways where you're trying to get a sense of who's playing those events and who's performed well in those events too.
Yeah. So yeah, and then like obviously off the tee, I think carry distance is something to look at this week. I think like we've already talked about on approach, looking at 200 plus. Definitely the scoring filters that we have, par 5 birdie or better, I think is, and again, I guess we can do that after this one, but I think just with the pass balance, kind of limits rollout on the drives this week. So I might probably weigh carry distance a little more than normal, almost similar to kind of a West Coast event where you don't get as much rollout as well with the drier air, the softer fairways. But yeah, this is another way, like even some of these guys who don't have much sample and like driver heavy, like if you just want to know who the bombers are, you can expand the rounds and just kind of for some of these guys like like Poy Gitter and kind of see only 11 rounds here, but clearly number one in carry distance. So, and then your guy Thor is right there too.
Thor is right there. Yeah, and you can go sorting by rank. I think this is also a good spot to look at average, because you can see maybe the discrepancy between actual distance, isn't quite as massive. Personally, in the model that I built, I used both. So I used carry and driving distance just to capture it a little bit, but I did, to your point, weigh it 3 times more on carry and gave driving distance just a little. And I wanted both in there, and it is double counting, but like it matters this week for sure. Like you literally, if you don't have a ton of time this week and you aren't building, a full on model, and you don't want to get in the weeds. I don't want to oversimplify it, but like I would just look at carry distance and like pick a couple guys you like here, click into some, click at some recent form or some stuff, because it's not going to be someone way down the board in terms of carry distance, right? Like it's again, there's some other things that matter here. We're touching on all those for sure, but this is a spot where fat fingers. I think that's all going to matter a ton this week. So you can see again, Portgeider, Thor Bjornsson, Rasmus Højgaard, Jesper Svensson, as we touched on. Again, we got 2 rounds from my guy, Jose Luis Ballester Baero. I'm probably absolutely butchering that. But seems to hit it pretty far, and the driving distance kind of matches that too. But I'm with you. The carry, I think, is what's going to really matter here. Springer, Kitayama, Gotterup, Matty Schmidt, Nikolai Højgaard. So we're getting all these absolute bombers that we expected to see here. Here's your boy Jaeger. Again, massive sample, 90 rounds, hits a country mile. So worth looking at this week. Great place to start.
And even another angle to look at, and I know, again, we kind of repeat this sometimes, but, we have a miscellaneous filter. If you go to the if you want to look at things like, okay, well, let's look at ball speed. This is another way you don't need a ton of sample size for this, because guys, this is a pretty sticky number. Guys who hit it, you have high ball speed, they're going to have high ball speed all the time. And so, this is another method, on a week like this where, I may just take a peek and see, maybe not model it, but just kind of see, because obviously these numbers are going to match up to the driving distance, because, they obviously go hand in hand. But this is just another tool that we have for you to look at.
Casual 190 ball speed is absolutely insane. It's just bonkers. I mean, guys that drive it really long or drive, you'll see maybe, mid 70s. So, anything 180 north in terms of just almost your rolling average is pretty remarkable. So, you see some of the similar names we see here, Jake Knapp last year, somewhat out of nowhere, obviously, carrying comfortably 180 plus ball speed here. So, it is a great use, and again, a unique resource that we have here to kind of look at this too, that these guys sticking out with some pretty massive ball speeds.
And again, with that little showdown nugget I gave, as far as, hey, if you want to look, who plays the best in the mornings, you can kind of obviously probably, I don't know what the sample is for this, but yeah, kind of a good way to see, match up morning tee times with guys who typically play well in the mornings, especially if they're, better than their normal baseline. Just another thing to look at for showdown.
Yep. Love it. In the chat, with Paspalum, would you consider filtering by Caribbean? You can. Ron highlighted that too. My preference would be, because the sample's so small. I like the corollary course if we're kind of in that, like in terms of what you want to do with that, even though you're not getting all Paspalum, obviously, on the corollary courses. I think that would be my preferred. You're going to get a real smallish sample that might not be a perfect fit. But what are your thoughts on how to?
That's an easy answer, because if you go to the agronomy section, we have by fairway, by rough, by greens, but pretty much all the Paspalum courses have wall-to-wall Paspalum. So if you just click on, Paspalum greens, now you're not going to get a lot of, putting data, because that's kind of the strokes gain stuff.
Yeah.
But really what I like to do is I'll just look, and I'll actually do this in my model, is I'll create strokes gain total on Paspalum. And so you're not getting, off the tee, the approach those, but just to see kind of in general how guys play on Paspalum grass. So that's what I would do. I would just select Paspalum greens and look at strokes gain total.
Good call out. Matt, we have an admin who should be able to turn that on in no time. So you should be in the Discord, firing on all cylinders soon. Obviously, if you're not, reach out to me and we'll help you get started. But that's usually a pretty seamless process there. All right, yeah, I think again looking at ball speed again, unique thing too. Club head speed as well. Club head speed more something like you would want for last week, right? You want to get through that thick rough. Even though it's typically capturing stuff off the tee, that definitely translates in being able to hit the ball, swing hard, get through the thick rough. We don't have the thick rough to mess around with here. Yeah, but driver stuff, I mean, just start there. Overall approach proximity. I want to take a look at that here before we wrap, because we do have obviously a lot of long approaches. Nothing in the typical buckets that we typically see. There's a lot of the PGA Tour events are living in that 150 to 200 range. 175. You can get a lot of stuff done here, 200 plus. Now, if you want tighter buckets, you want 25-yard ranges. If you go into fairway and rough approach, you can get those a little bit tighter. But you just in general 200 plus here, last 12 months. Again, some noisy sample stuff. But some of the names with larger samples that you could see here. We could see Nicolai Højgaard. We could see Thor up here. Our guy Blades Brown, good for Blades back in the field. Small sample, but young kids hit it far these days. Thor's one of those as well. Kitayama, Chandler Phillips. See Valimaki in here. Valimaki in the mix last year. Tried to chase down Jake Knapp. 200 plus, 200 to 250. Really nice range for Valimaki. Kevin Roy hits it far. Grillo, shout out. You mentioned that one earlier. Not playing well right now, but this is kind of a spot where form hasn't mattered a ton. Chan Kim, decent from the long stuff. Damon, Knapp, Chad Ramey, Philip Knowles. Some of the guys we've seen in some of the distance stuff as well. So that's a 12-month sample. If you back out a little bit longer, or we go to the 200 to 250 in general. See Valimaki again, Tristan Lawrence, Norgard again, Bomber, Nicolai Højgaard in that range. Let's see, more Grillo, Thor Brior Olsen, Phillips. So this matters a ton this week, Ron.
Yeah, and this is the course with the highest amount of approaches from 200 plus. It's just like massively higher than any other course. So I think that's another thing to kind of be very strong in your model this week is looking at those distances. Not as much from the rough. I'd probably even focus on fairway more than anything. But again, we have the ability to look at that, just straight fairway 200 plus. Yeah.
Yep. Let's see, bigger sample, similar names. Again, it's tough for some of these guys that are popping are real small samples. But you can look at, as you mentioned, breaking it down specifically into fairway and rough if you like. This gets a little dicey in terms of weighing it because it's really hard to get a sense of what exactly do I do in terms of the weights. But you want to see guys that have played well. Decent sample. I could see young Thor up here. Thorbjørn Olsen. So both of our Thors are popping here. That Mesner is just pretty nice sample here as well. Chandler Phillips, Jake Knapp, Valimaki again. So like Kurt Kitayama, who's been second here. There's definitely some confirmation bias in terms of this being a predictable stat moving forward because guys that have played well in the past are popping here in this metric. So I think those are always encouraging things to get a sense of, does that really matter? When you go through it, seems to matter.
Yep. Agreed.
Scoring. You said you want to look at a couple of scoring things. We can look at a scoring thing before we wrap. Last one for us.
Yeah. I think again, for me, what I'll do is I'll look at birdie or better percentage on easy scoring condition courses. So I think again, trying to recreate those conditions, combine those together is what I'll do. Obviously I think eagles on these par fives are going to come into play as well. So that's another thing you can look at, but even getting into par five, par three, par four, Looking at birdie or better percentage on those is another option. But for me, mostly trying to keep it a little simpler this week. I'll probably just focus on, like you have right here, birdie or better on easy courses.
We'll see if we can grab some of the round sample stuff out here for some guys. Again, maybe that's fair, maybe it's unfair to some of these guys. It's just, it's tough to, you don't want to give someone too much weight in the model. And they have basically, 7 rounds up against the guy with, 70 round sample, right? So that's tough. Ryan Gerard, Matteo Menacero right on the cusp here of our round sample, but then Harry Hall, again, this is birdie or better over the last calendar year on basically weeding out difficult golf courses. We have average, easy, and very easy. Again, small sample for Jesper Svensson, who also hits at the Country Mile. Thor, Rasmus Højgaard, Frankie Kappen, Justin Lauer, Joe Highsmith, Aaron Rye. You can see Bo Hostler right behind it. Steven Yeager, decent sample right in the mix. Michael Kim, decent sample right here in the mix as well. Some of the other guys we've touched on that have been in the mix. Eagles in this as well. As you mentioned, you want to, take advantage. Valimaki, Alex Smalley, Alejandro Tosti. You could see Matt Wallace, David Lipsky, List, Knapp, Springer, Højgaard again. So again, any time you start to see some of these guys are bombers, making birdies, long proximity, you got to look at them this week. It's just kind of where you need to be focused on.
Yeah, there's a lot of international flavor this week. A lot of these guys, South Africa, a lot of Europeans. The Højgaard brothers are kind of notorious bombers. So, yeah, even Valimaki had, I think he was like second or something. I can't remember what year it was. But, yeah, a lot of these guys who just kind of, just bomb away off the tee. And, I think if we get into, if the winds stay low and, I think we could get into the -20s this week. Yeah, just kind of just a different week. Obviously everyone's looking forward to the Florida swing, but yeah, you never know. These are kind of the tournaments where you can kind of, if you can do your research, I think the rabbit hole is a huge help on weeks like this to kind of focus on, and again, everybody's going to kind of be probably looking at the bomber narrative. So if you can maybe try to find a way to get a little different, maybe looking at weaker fields or something like that we've already looked at this week, I think you can find an edge somewhere.
Yeah. It's a good call. We can look at windy. I left the scoring conditions on because I do think it kind of matches up with what we're looking to do. You can mess around with the sample if it's too small, but just looking at the last calendar year, who has played best on, again, easy, very easy, average scoring conditions, windy conditions. Kurt Kitayama, Rico Hoey, Patrick Fishburne, Aaron Rye, Harry Hall, CT Pan, Alex Smalley, Patrick Rogers, Sam Ryder, and Molinari. Interesting to see. Again, smallest sample. You can mess around with that, back it out a little bit if you'd like, but we could get into some win stuff later in the week too. So again, you can turn everything else off scoring condition wise. Just look at windy, mess around with windy and corollary courses, however you want to do it. Again, there's you can kind of mess around with samples, which again gives you different looks as well in terms of time frame. So lots of different ways to go about this for sure. But finding unique ways too to differentiate yourself, especially in one and done this week. One and done is going to be really hard because again, there's not like a real clear top of the board guy. You're going to probably have to burn someone that you maybe even thought you wouldn't use at all this week. It's kind of just the nature of who's been here. Whereas a lot of people thought, like, if Finau comes here every year, this is a nice easy spot for Finau in a one and done. He's not here, so interesting to have some more discussions with that tomorrow with Andy, as we kind of touch on that as well. So, all right, good stuff as always. Appreciate everyone hanging out with Ron and I today. Again, betspertsgolf.com. Reach out directly if you have any questions. You want to access the rabbit hole yourself. You want to mess around with this, or you just want to use wisdom of the crowd. Like you said, you have other folks in the industry that are using this to build their models, to build their content, and they have their models shared for subscribers. So if you just want to build wisdom of the crowd type models, summarize it. You can download any of these models into a CSV. If you're, handy on Excel, weigh it, see if there's any commonalities, and just build your betting card and your DFS pools from there. You can use the optimizer, which we have for DFS as well. I'll have DFS specific content for you to check out too. So betspertsgolf.com. Again, reach out directly on Twitter at Betsperts Golf. If you want a discount, you can reach out to Ron or myself directly as well. Happy to help you get in for cheap for the first month, kick around. I'll see if it's something for you. And you get in now for really cheap. You're going to get yourself almost up to the Masters. We're like 49 days away from Augusta coverage. Really excited for that. Players on deck, API coming too with our next signature event. So check all that out. You can get that as part of your month sub. So Betsperts Golf, where you ever listen to podcasts, on YouTube as well. So for Ron, I'm Ryan. We'll see you all next time. Thanks, everyone.